Hi. Lost is a logistical decision simulator created by Garamond. In the first scenario, we must consider that Garamond is like a small supply chain. It has suppliers, owns a factory, and markets its products through a small store. We will start by talking about suppliers. We work with 3 different types of raw material. For each type of raw material, we have selected 3 different suppliers. For example, for raw material A, we have supplier A1, supplier A2, and supplier A3. Each of them has been qualified in relation to 4 different items: quality, delivery time, cost of delivery, and unit cost. The details of these scores will be found in the simulator.
Thank you, Ernest. Now I ask Jenny to explain the costs associated with the orders to our suppliers.
Thank you, Pat. In the same window where the product data appears, we will also find the data of our suppliers. As we mentioned before, for each type of raw material, we have selected 3 different suppliers. The first column has information on the unit cost per kilogram of raw material. The second column specifies the quality or purity of the material delivered by the supplier. The third column shows the delivery time of the supplier. These delivery times are fixed. For example, if we request 200 kilograms of raw material from supplier A2, this material will be available at the beginning of the next week. Finally, the last column specifies the cost of delivery. This cost is fixed, that is, the delivery cost of 10 kilograms or 200 kilograms is exactly the same. Now, suppose that you want to order 200 kilograms from supplier A1, and 500 kilograms from supplier C3. Because an order of 200 kilograms was made to the A1 supplier, then the following costs are incurred. Now, because an order of 500 kilograms has been made to supplier C3. So, the total cost is
Thank you, Jenny. Finally, Vale will explain some other important details of the simulator.
Hello again. I will try to explain some important issues in the operation. First of all, it is important to remember that we have 3 machines and we work 2 shifts from Monday to Friday. This implies that we have 3 workers on the morning shift, and 3 workers on the evening shift. So, in total we have 6 workers. Each worker receives a weekly salary of $1,500, so weekly, we must pay $9,000 to our employees. Of course, this guarantees that we have a capacity of 16 hours per machine per day, that is, 80 hours per machine per week. On the other hand, each machine consumes some other resources, such as oils or energy. The costs of these other resources have been quantified, and are presented in this table, as hourly operating cost. So, if you make a production plan that uses the machine 30 hours, then you should consider a payment of $600. The hourly operating costs of each machine are specified in this table. Finally, you should also consider the following information. At the end of the week, finished products are in the factory and must be transported to the store. To transport them, it is necessary to pay a transportation cost. The cost of each truck that travels from the factory to the store is $1,000. Each truck has the capacity to carry 800 balls. It is not necessary to transport all the production. You can choose to leave some products in the factory, and to transport them in the following weeks. I hope this information can be useful to you. I hope you can have fun, and I wish you good luck.
Thanks everyone for your help. Now, I only need to specify a few details before you can start the game. As I mentioned before, the game contains a questionnaire with 10 questions that will help you determine if the instructions in the game have been clear. On the other hand, initially you will have $30,000 in the bank, but for every question you answer correctly you can win $7,000 extra. This way, it is possible that you can start the game with $100,000 in the bank. You can try to solve the questionnaire up to 3 times, and the game will take as valid the result of the last questionnaire, for the calculation of your bonus. After the questionnaire, you will arrive at the window, Instructions and Start of the game. This window specifies that you must take 5 decisions every week in the following year. Decision 1. How many items of each product will be manufactured this week? Decision 2. How much raw material of each type will you use in production? Decision 3. How much raw material will you request from your suppliers? Decision 4. How many transport units are you going to use this week? And Decision 5. How many units of each product will you send to the store this week? Here, it is important to make 2 observations that I think I had not mentioned. First, by company policy, the weighted quality of a production run must be at least 90. And second, if you decide to use a quantity of raw material higher than what you need, the excess raw material is wasted. For example, if in a run of production you need 12 kilograms of raw material A, and you decide to use 20 kilograms, then you will be wasting 8 kilograms. When you click the Start New Game button, a screen with 3 windows will appear. The first window is called Production Data. Here will appear the production data that correspond to your game. This is the window that my colleagues explained a few moments ago. The second window is Demand Data. Here is the demand for each of the products during the last 4 years. This data is very useful when you make forecasts. Finally, this is the Decision window. Here is where the game takes place. The Decision window contains information cells, decision cells, and windows. The information cells will always appear in red and green colors, and may change color if the values you place are allowed or violate some type of restrictions of the company. The first group of cells will tell you the number of items in the store at the beginning of the week. The second group of cells will indicate the number of units of raw material in the factory, and the units of raw material in transit. This group of cells will tell you if the quantity of raw material you have selected for production is sufficient. Otherwise, these cells will turn red. This particular cell will tell you if the weighted quality of raw material you have selected for production is sufficient. Otherwise, these cells will turn red. Remember that the minimum acceptable quality is 90. Finally, this cell will tell you how much money the company has in the bank. By the way, I think I forgot to mention 2 important details. First, the bank pays an annual interest rate of 8% which is capitalized on a weekly basis. And second, this detail is very, very important. The company should never operate with red numbers. If you operate with red numbers, then the game will end, and the company will have broken. The cells in white color are the decision cells. Each set of cells is designed for the decisions that you must make. In the first decision, you must say how many units of each article you will produce this week. In the second decision, you must specify the quantity of raw material to be used in the production plan. Finally, in these cells, you must answer how many units of raw material you will request from your suppliers. Obviously, to make these decisions you can consult the information cells, but if you require more detailed information, then you can consult the different windows that appear here. The first one is called Data Graph. This window is used to graph the data of the demands of previous periods. The second one is called Finished Product. This window will show the finished product that exists both in the factory and in the store. The third is called Raw Material. This window will show the raw material that is in the factory and the raw material in transit. The last one in this column is called Help for Decision Making. This window is interactive. This window consists of 3 parts. In the first part you will observe these details. In these cells you can try to design your production plan. When you enter the number of units to produce of each article, these graphs will indicate the time available in each machine. Obviously, When one of the graphs reaches 0, it means that you do not have time available on that machine. In this part, you can see if the raw material available in the factory is sufficient to carry out the production run. This semaphore will indicate if the available raw material allows you to reach the minimum quality allowed. Finally, this box will tell you how much money you need to complete the production plan. This amount includes the salary of the employees and the cost of using the machines. Now, it is possible to continue with the second part of this window. This part helps you to consider the raw material you will use in the production run. In these cells, you can place the amount of raw material you want to use, and these bars will tell you how much raw material is still available. These semaphores will indicate to you if the quantities of raw material you have chosen are sufficient to carry out the production run. Finally, this semaphore will tell you if the quantities of raw material you have chosen reach an acceptable quality. The last part of this window will allow you to simulate the orders you can make to your suppliers. This box will tell you the cost of making these orders. If you want to experiment with other values, then press the button Clear Data. If the values seem appropriate for your decision, then press the button Transfer Values. When you finish simulating your decisions, then go back to the decision window. There are two other windows. The window, Trophy Room. This window shows you some achievements in the game, and the window, Logistic Indicators. This window is important, because here are some indicators that will help you to know your areas of opportunity, and will allow you to improve your performance in the game. When you have defined all your decisions, then click on the button Next Period. When you click on the button Next Period, then the following report will appear. At the top, the report will show the weekly demand and the initial inventory in the store. If the demand is lower than the initial inventory, then the weekly sale will correspond to the demand. If the demand is higher than the initial inventory, then the weekly sale will correspond to the initial inventory. Remember that unmet demand is transformed into lost sales. Sales revenue is obtained by multiplying the number of units sold by the selling price. In this part, you can find the payments that have to be made. There will always be three items: wages, payment to suppliers, operation cost. The difference between income and payments is added to quantity you had in the bank, and a new total is obtained. This new total is the number you can never have in red. When you finish reviewing this information, then click on the Next Period button. The following window will appear. This window will tell you, numerically and graphically, how many units of finished product you have in the factory and in the store. When you review that information, then decide how many transport units you will use to transfer the units from the factory to the store. After this, you must indicate which units and how many you will transfer. When you have finished choosing, then click on the button Next Period. This will bring you back to the decision window, but in the next period,